Vlad the Impaler carved his name into history through something far more horrifying than typical warfare: his mastery of human suffering. His legacy wasn't about conquests or battles. It was about screams echoing through forests filled with impaled bodies. He ruled during a brutal time when the Ottoman Empire crushed Christian lands. But even in an era of violence, Vlad stood out. He didn't just punish, he transformed execution into a twisted art form of pure agony. What pushed him to such extremes? Was it madness? A dark strategy? The truth hides beneath layers of legend. This isn't just a story about a cruel ruler. It's about how unchecked power can turn a human into something worse than any monster. To understand Vlad, you must understand his world, a place where survival meant brutality, where the weak were crushed by forces beyond their control. His methods were unprecedented, even for his time, more terrifying than any vampire story. This tale isn't for the weak. It's a journey into humanity's darkest corners, where political survival meets pure sadism, where the hunger for power transforms a person into something inhuman. In 1448, a 17-year-old prince took the throne of Wallachia, a tiny state trapped between massive empires. This wasn't just a political role. It was a death sentence disguised as an opportunity. Survival meant choosing sides carefully, picking the strongest ally and praying they'd keep their word. Vlad's early life was shaped by survival in a brutal world. As a young hostage in the Ottoman court, he learned how power really works. The Turks didn't rule with kindness, they ruled with fear. Public executions were more than punishment. They were a show of absolute control. Vlad watched and learned. He saw that mercy could be fatal, and true power meant making your enemies tremble. His family's history was written in blood. His father murdered by nobles, his brother tortured and buried alive. These weren't just tragedies, they were lessons. When Vlad finally claimed his throne in 1456, he wasn't interested in playing nice. His kingdom was a mess, torn apart by civil war, threatened from all sides. Other leaders might have negotiated. Not Vlad. He decided terror would be his weapon, not just punishment. Psychological warfare. He wanted his name to stop rebellions before they even started. And his method? Impalement. But this wasn't just killing. This was a calculated art of suffering. Each execution was designed to send a message so horrifying that people would think twice before crossing him. Vlad wasn't just a ruler. He was a nightmare made flesh. Vlad's torture method started with carefully crafted stakes, blunt, not sharp. A sharp stake would kill too quickly. His goal was prolonged suffering. The process was brutal. Victims were forced onto stakes, which were inserted with chilling precision. Most often, the stake would enter through the rectum, carefully guided to avoid instant death. Then they'd raise the stake upright, letting gravity do its terrible work. Executioners became experts at this horrific art. They could position stakes to emerge from different body parts: chest, mouth, shoulder, back. Each placement meant a different kind of pain, a different timeline for death. The most skilled torturers kept victims conscious, aware, able to feel every moment of their agony. They could scream. They could watch their own slow destruction. Vlad didn't just kill, he created visual terror. He'd arrange impaled bodies in geometric patterns, visible from miles away. Entire forests of dying humans became his twisted monuments. Travelers would encounter these scenes days later, some victims still alive, decomposition already beginning. The psychological impact was immense. The sight, the smell, the sounds. These human gardens of suffering spread fear far beyond his borders, cementing Vlad's reputation as a monster across Europe. And impalement was just the beginning of his cruelty. Vlad's most brutal moment came in 1459 during an Easter feast. He invited the noble families who had plotted against his father, a seemingly peaceful gathering. These aristocrats dressed in their finest, bringing their families, expecting celebration and new beginnings. But Vlad had other plans. As wine flowed and conversations grew warm, he suddenly rose and spoke about forgiveness. Then, with a single signal, his guards locked the doors. The elderly nobles were impaled immediately, a horrific warm-up for what was to come. Younger nobles and their families were forced to march to Castle Dracula. They would become slaves, building the very fortress that would cement Vlad's power. He watched their suffering personally, adjusting stakes to maximize pain. Witnesses said he would dine among the dying, making cruel jokes and mocking their agony. The journey itself was torture. Noble families used to luxury were driven through harsh mountain passes, wearing their feast clothes. They worked until they collapsed, many dying during construction. Their bodies became part of the castle's foundation, a twisted symbol of Vlad's revenge. Those who survived became permanent prisoners. Their noble titles now meant nothing as they performed the most degrading labor, always under the threat of impalement. With this single event, Vlad wiped out an entire generation of nobility. Vlad's brutality spread like wildfire through diplomatic circles. Courts in Hungary, Poland, and Western Europe heard whispers of a ruler who didn't play by any rules. Foreign ambassadors started treading carefully. They knew diplomatic immunity meant nothing to this guy. Merchants and diplomats became unexpected storytellers. They survived, but only to spread terror. A German trader named Jacob Rem described a nightmare in Turgovishta. The central square, a forest of death, hundreds of stakes, bodies in various stages of decay. The stench was so horrific that horses refused to enter the city. Rem's team had to breathe through wine-soaked cloths just to survive. Even Sultan Mehmed II, a conqueror who'd seen countless atrocities, backed down. After encountering 20,000 impaled Ottoman prisoners, he reportedly said Vlad was worse than the devil himself. This wasn't just brutality, this was psychological warfare. A Hungarian diplomat, Toma Kakuzenos, experienced Vlad's twisted hospitality firsthand. During a dinner at Castle Dracula, he was forced to eat while watching prisoners die on stakes. Vlad casually asked if the smell bothered him. When Kakuzenos admitted it did, Vlad helpfully suggested impaling him higher up for fresher air. The message was clear. Vlad wasn't just cruel, he was unpredictably, terrifyingly creative. Those who survived Vlad's terror returned home with stories that chilled the bones. They became unwilling messengers of fear. Their tales spread like wildfire, more powerful than any army's conquest. Ottoman commanders started avoiding his lands completely. They'd take longer routes just to steer clear of Vlad's domain. The stories were too consistent to be lies. Witnesses from different lands, Germany, Hungary, Turkey, all described the same horrifying scenes. These were men used to brutality. Warfare was their daily bread, but even they were shocked by Vlad's methods. His cruelty wasn't random. It was a calculated system. He wasn't just killing, he was sending messages. Eliminate opponents, scare away invaders, build a reputation so terrifying that future conflicts would never even start. In those times, power wasn't just about armies, it was about fear. And Vlad, he was a master of terror. He targeted everyone strategically, nobles who challenged him, merchants who cheated, minorities who seemed disloyal. Impalement was his signature, not just a death sentence, but a warning. Bodies left rotting for weeks, a permanent, gruesome billboard of what happens to those who cross him. Vlad's brutal tactics echoed long after the initial punishment. Travelers who stumbled upon his gruesome displays would carry those haunting memories forever, spreading his terrifying reputation far and wide. His methods were strategic. By publicly executing corrupt merchants, he cleaned up trade and boosted tax revenues. Fear became his most powerful weapon. He didn't need massive armies. His reputation alone kept potential rebels in line. But this approach had a dark side. His reign of terror created a poisonous atmosphere. Nobody dared speak honestly. Allies trembled. People lived in constant dread. Vlad's power isolated him completely. In 1462, he orchestrated a chilling diplomatic encounter. Ottoman ambassadors arrived expecting formal negotiations. When they refused to remove their turbans, Vlad seemed understanding. "Since these are so important," he said smoothly, "I'll make sure they stay on." His solution was horrific. He had his guards nail the turbans directly to the ambassadors' skulls with iron spikes. Then he impaled them, alive. Their death sent a message that would echo through history: cross Vlad and suffer unimaginably. Vlad's response to the Ottoman diplomats was brutal beyond imagination. He didn't just kill them, he made a statement. Their bodies were displayed along the main road, a gruesome warning to anyone who dared enter his territory. No diplomatic immunity would protect you here. This wasn't just murder, it was psychological warfare. The ambassadors' deaths were a massive violation of medieval diplomatic rules, something that would typically spark immediate military retaliation. But Vlad didn't care. He was sending a message that went far beyond normal political strategy. Sultan Mehmed II took the bait. What was once a simple tribute relationship turned into a personal vendetta. The conflict would push Vlad's brutality to new heights. When the Ottoman forces invaded in 1462, Vlad's tactics were horrifyingly ingenious. He didn't just destroy resources, he transformed the entire landscape into a nightmare. Villages looked normal from a distance, but up close, they were populated with impaled residents, frozen in death, watching. He poisoned wells with decomposing bodies, filled granaries with mutilated corpses. Every step of the Ottoman advance was a carefully staged horror show, a psychological trap designed to break the invaders' spirit before they could even fight. Vlad's attack that night was a mind game, pure and simple. He didn't aim to win a battle. No, he wanted to send a message. His small band of fighters snuck into the Sultan's camp, targeting the most personal space possible. The goal? Show that no one was untouchable. The raid failed to grab the Sultan, but it worked perfectly. Vlad proved that raw military might meant nothing when facing an enemy who played by zero rules. On the way back, Vlad did something horrific. He captured hundreds of Ottoman soldiers, but he didn't take prisoners. Instead, he impaled them along the road, strategically placed, screaming, dying. The advancing Ottoman troops would have to march past their suffering comrades, hearing their desperate pleas. Some soldiers couldn't take it. They deserted. They called it the devil's own territory. And that was exactly what Vlad wanted. His tactics worked. The massive Ottoman army slowed to a crawl. Commanders struggled to keep their troops in line. Soldiers were witnessing horrors beyond imagination. Supply lines broke down. No one wanted to enter Vlad's lands. By 1462, Vlad's brutality had destroyed everything. His supporters were gone. Potential allies had fled. Fear ruled everything. The nobles were dead or exiled. Merchants were too terrified to do business. And the people, they lived in constant, paralyzing terror. Vlad was alone, completely and utterly alone. Even Vlad's Hungarian allies started to see him as more trouble than help. King Matthias Corvinus had once backed Vlad as a shield against the Ottomans, but now his own ambassadors were sending back horrifying reports. The Hungarian court realized Vlad was becoming a massive diplomatic headache. His brutal reputation was making it hard to maintain relationships with other European powers. So they made a choice. In 1462, Hungarian forces captured Vlad. They locked him up for 12 years, not as punishment, but as a political move. His freedom was simply too dangerous. They called it protective custody, but everyone knew the truth. During his imprisonment, stories of Vlad's cruelty spread like wildfire. German printing presses churned out pamphlets detailing his atrocities. Some were exaggerated, but all were based on real witness accounts. These stories transformed Vlad from a historical figure into a symbol of pure evil, the same darkness that would later inspire Dracula. When Vlad briefly returned to power in 1476, his methods hadn't changed, but the world had. His terror no longer paralyzed people like before. He died in battle that same year, surrounded by enemies, abandoned by those he'd tried to control. Vlad's legacy reached far beyond his time. He showed how systematic cruelty could achieve short-term goals, but at what cost? Dictators have long studied Vlad's brutal reign, seeing both its power and its ultimate weakness. His story shows how fear can control people, but never truly win. Bram Stoker turned Vlad into a vampire, maybe because the real human horror was too much to face. The supernatural monster is scary, but the real Vlad, he's terrifying because he proves what humans can do when nobody stops them. Researchers have dug deep into Vlad's mind. His actions weren't just about politics. They were a twisted mix of strategy and pure sadism. He didn't just want to rule, he wanted to make people suffer. His methods worked in the short term. He crushed opposition, he made enemies tremble, but those same tactics destroyed him. The fear he created isolated him. His reputation became a prison. Vlad's story is a brutal lesson. Power built on terror always collapses. The more he tried to control through fear, the more he lost control. In the end, the system he created consumed him, just like his victims. Vlad the Impaler shows us something dark about human nature. Power can twist people in ways we'd rather not admit. His story isn't just about a cruel king. It's about what happens when someone decides morals don't matter anymore. Think about it. Vlad wasn't born evil. He became monstrous through experiences that broke something inside him. His methods were brutal, horrifyingly effective. He crushed opposition, scared away invaders, maintained total control. But at what cost? He destroyed more than lives. He shattered the very foundations of human decency. His reign proves how thin the line is between civilization and pure savagery. What's truly terrifying is how rational his cruelty was. This wasn't random madness. This was cold, calculated strategy. Vlad understood something fundamental about human fear. He knew that terror could control people more powerfully than love or law. In our modern world, we'd like to think we're different, but the potential for such systematic cruelty? It's still here, waiting, just beneath the surface of our civilized veneer. This makes Vlad's actions even more chilling. It suggests that such brutal methods weren't just random acts of madness, but calculated choices by someone who believed the results justified the horror. His story haunts us because it reveals uncomfortable truths about human nature. How can someone decide that torture serves a purpose? We remember Vlad's victims by understanding how monsters like him rise to power. It's a stark reminder that civilization is fragile. Evil doesn't just happen. It grows in spaces where moral boundaries blur and people compromise their humanity for political gain. The most terrifying lesson: every person carries the potential for cruelty and for resistance. We must always stay alert, always choose compassion, always protect human dignity.